Thanks for tuning in again. During the last meeting, we talked about elevated racism with regard to how our children are being dealt with here at the Baltimore City school system level. I have been exposed to a lot of raggedy run operations. But the city of Baltimore school system is probably one of the worst, the most unethical, the most cheating-hearted groups I have ever seen in my entire life. Amazingly, despite there being an overwhelming larger number of African American kids in the Baltimore City school system, with more black administrators than you'll find anywhere per capita. Yet, this system is really run by a handful of whites who could give a tinker's darn about the future of our children and their education. The first obligation of a school system is to provide a free, appropriate public education to every child who is enrolled and attending a school in that school district. Yet everybody passes the buck. So the people downtown that you encounter when you go to the Board of Education building, they are just window dressing. Mostly black, proud, good-looking, intelligent-looking people, well-dressed, and couldn't make a decision to even buy a toothpick. This system is run by a handful of white people who don't give a tinker's darn about the Baltimore City public school system because their kids and grandkids go to well-heeled schools out in the white area. I submit to you that the time has come for us to realize that something has to be done. We're in the heart of winter as I speak, and yet our children are in these classrooms where they find water that is glazed over with ice in the morning. It's so cold in some of these classrooms. Yet nobody cares. You find more bullying going on our school campuses than anywhere else. Does anybody care? I think not. How can we expect our children to go to school and apply themselves when they're afraid that Big Willie or Bubba behind them is carrying a 9mm pistol or a knife in his pocket? These kids are afraid to death. The reason special education schools exist like mine is to provide a safe and clean environment with support mechanisms in place that will be conducive to the learning and the futures of our children. What this school is doing, the school district is doing, Baltimore City Public Schools, is nothing more than prepping an entire generation of young people to prison. If you cannot read, write, or count money, you have no chance of becoming a productive citizen as time progresses and you become older with greater responsibilities. We opened 2 years ago, and even though we are approved by the state of Maryland, the Baltimore City Public School System refuses to send us children. We are approved by the state, and the bourgeoisie, so-called black leaders who are out front at the Baltimore City Public School office, they give the impression that they have the wherewithal to do whatever they want, but beyond protecting the powers that be from us, and I say us because of the 13 schools, this is the only black special ed non-public school in the system. And that's frightening. Even though over 50% of the children are black, even though we have the cultural linkages and a greater reason to be concerned about bettering the child's future, this system has given a thumb down and will not allow us to function as a non-public special ed student. I was able to take 4 of Baltimore City's worst kids and turn them around in 6 months. Kids who did not go to school, would not go to school, began the process of coming to school every day. Once they began to realize that they could read and write and learn to count money with relative ease, they began to get excited about being in school. Our liaison, who is a black male, a black man, has done everything in his power to sabotage our efforts to be a prosperous, a very successful school for the young people who are in need of special ed services. These services are paid for by the federal government, the state, and the local school district. But the monies that are sent in to cover the cost of providing the necessary special education to our children is redirected into non-educational programs by the city fathers. Most of these monies go into a general fund, and once these monies go into the general fund, there's no accountability. And everybody enjoys the fruits of these absconded funds, but the kids who are supposedly the intended audience. The school systems, the school campuses are out of control. The kids are not motivated, not excited. They are floundering. Everybody is angry, or too many people are angry. But getting back to Maryland Progressive Institute, we are fully state approved. We are compliant. We have a beautiful little school here. There is not sufficient room for a group of kids to run away and hide in a separate classroom and engage in a menage a trois, as do many of these schools experience. It can't happen here. Here on this campus, a student is never beyond the vision of a staff member. When those kids are in need of one-on-one assistance, that is what is received. But let me go back to Baltimore City Public School System just for a moment. We are penalized for one reason. We are black owned, and there is no room for a successful black business here in the city of Baltimore. I moved here 2 years ago from Los Angeles, where I had founded and successfully run New West Technical Academy, which was a highly successful special ed school in the city of Los Angeles. And I thought it was one of the worst systems in the world until I moved to Baltimore. I felt good about moving or coming to Baltimore and duplicating the kind of school that I was able to set up in the city of Los Angeles. I felt good about coming here because that one of the greatest needs in terms of special education services is right here in Baltimore. Right here in Baltimore. This is the murder capital of the United States per capita, and nobody wants to move here. So I set up a school in the 4th quadrant. I have reached out to every elected official that I can imagine or dream of, to no avail. Nobody will even come to visit us simply because the token Negroes here are so afraid of offending the white power structure. Our liaison, who is a black man who supposedly served as an advocate for this school, came in as a hitman to destroy our school because his boss, a black woman who is the executive director, ordered him to do so. Now, you often hear these horror stories about black on black hatred. Let me tell you something. It is really alive and well here. You're talking about the new face of Jim Crow, but this time the new face of Jim Crow, as is the case in Baltimore, is black. So you have all of these black people downtown with no problem, with no power, and with no concern for their own children. We're talking about black and brown boys and girls who are falling by the wayside without hope. How can they possibly live with themselves. And I'm talking about these black administrators who have no power. And unless the white folk help you here, during your experience here as a business person, you're going nowhere, because the black people downtown are cutthroat. They recirculate these kids between 4 or 5 white-owned, large, well-established schools. However, not one is capable of providing the level of service that we're capable of providing. And then finally, very often in neighborhoods throughout Baltimore, it is so dangerous that many parents do not allow their kids to go out in the yard and play. So when many of our kids go to school, they are met with the opportunity to just run freely, they feel, and have a good time on school campus. Not true. School campuses are where most of our young people today are introduced to drugs. And you have the young drug dealers who will give samples and then bully their schoolmates into trying them. And then before you know it, you have a young drug addict. It is so sad. Yet when you attempt to talk to, when I have attempted to talk to the so-called powers that be, everybody seems more than willing to turn a blind eye and a deaf ear. Nobody cares. Again, the monies that come into the Baltimore city schools system are more than sufficient. We get a lot of money here, but the powers that be will not spend that money on special ed, which is a federal mandate. They take that money and they place that money into non-educational funds, where then it is later distributed to their good friends. They're buying construction equipment that have nothing to do with the educational system. They set up all kinds of fake or phony programs where they're able to write checks for millions of dollars a quarter to their friends, setting up these fake programs. Nonetheless, everybody is benefiting but the children who are suffering the greatest harm as a result of nobody caring. Our liaison, a black man who works under a black woman who happens to be the executive director of non-public special education school, again, was directed to shut us down by depriving us of children, instructed to shut us down. After this particular liaison brought the first 3 students, and we were in the process of enrolling these students. They had been approved by the state and everybody else. In the process of enrolling these students, our black liaison came back and withdrew those students and refused to let us provide the services for them. As a result, we've lost over $1.5 million in this last 12 months because of his ill deeds. And during the last 12 months, we have not been sent a single referral. I think it is somewhat despicable that at this stage of the game for Maryland Progressive Institute that we now have to go to the American Civil Liberties Union and fight to have our rights restored, our rights to provide academic education and social training to our kids who are in need of such services. And how far do we have to go after the meeting with the American Civil Liberties Union? Maybe we have to present our case before the United Nations Court? How ridiculous. It is time for change here in Baltimore. It has become the outhouse of the United States in terms of what it does not do for our children. May God have mercy on the black people who look the other way as our kids are falling by the wayside. Our kids are dropping dead in the street every day from drugs, primarily fentanyl. A kid who's energetic on campus, then the moment he or she, or the moment they display a little bit too much energy, then we always have some psychiatrist or school psychologist who will take the student to a psychiatrist and have that child put on medication, such as your Ritalins, Risperdal, you name it. We're turning our kids into drug addicts. Maryland Progressive Institute offers that ray of hope. Stand with us, people. I'd like you to continue following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, YouTube. We're having our big meeting here at the school on Saturday, February 2nd at 11 o'clock. And together, we will begin the process of making a difference for your kid and anybody else's child who is enrolled and attending school in the Baltimore public city school system. Thank you so much for tuning in. There's so much I have to say and want to say today, but we must segmentize. Please join us on Saturday morning, February 2nd at 11 a.m. Until then, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, as we will be coming to you every day, and I look forward to seeing you here at our facility on Saturday, 11 a.m. Thank you, and have a blessed day.